These two photos were taken with my iPhone. The difference is that one is completely unedited and the other one was edited using a free application. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how we are going to edit the photos that we took in the previous video. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will put it up on screen for you right now and down in the description below so you can go check it out. All right, so I do have 12 photos that we can choose from. I'm going to pick one photo to do across all these applications that we're going to be talking about today. And the first application is actually the one that is native on your phone, and that is your Photos application. So we have this opened up now, and in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that there is RAW. This is a RAW photo that we took on the iPhone. And again, in episode 1, we talked about the settings that you can use in order to make the highest quality photos. So make sure you go watch that before you continue this video. But on this, you do have a little bit of editing capabilities, not a whole lot, but just the basics in order to at least get something out there. So at the bottom, we have a settings icon that we're going to go ahead and tap on. And once this opens up, we can see that we have a lot of different options down here that we can swipe through and choose from. We're going to start at the exposure level. So with exposure, you can just slide this back and forth. I like to sometimes darken the entirety of the photo a little bit, just give it a little bit more of a deep contrast look. Brilliance, this is going to be something that is more of like a artificial enhancement of the entire photo. So this is completely up to you. I don't typically mess with that though. Highlights, we are going to see what highlights that we can modify here. And it looks like it's primarily on the BMW logo. So we'll go ahead and increase those a little bit because we do want to get a little bit of enhancement there. So that way it's the focal point. Shadows, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to bring those down a little bit because again, I want people to focus on the BMW logo. So we'll put that there. Contrast is pretty straightforward. It's the difference between each level of light, how harsh it is or how soft it is. So the higher you go, the more harsh it is. The lower you go, the more soft it's going to be. So with contrast, I like to keep it up a little bit, but I try not to do too much. Brightness, this sounds like it's just going to be a lot like the exposure setting, but this is probably going to target more of like the shadow area. So you can play around with these settings, but we're going to go ahead and keep that a little bit darker. The black point, exactly how it sounds. Anything that is black in the photo is going to become darker the higher you turn that up. Saturation is going to be the intensity of the colors in the photo itself. So if we turn this up, you can see the bottom right hand corner of the image, we have a intake pipe that's blue and it becomes a lot more saturated. And then you can also see the BMW logo changing a little bit here. So we're going to just keep that a little bit lower. Vibrance is how bright the colors are going to be. So if you want to make them look a little bit more dull, you can do it that way. Or if you want to make them look a little bit more bright, do it that way. So typically with these, I like to just go through each setting and see how it looks. Some of these settings I skip over, like the color temperature, the tint, unless there's some sort of correction that needs to be made. Sharpness, this is a really good one too if you want to have a little bit cleaner edges. You don't want to overdo it too much though, because the digital look of the image can be a little jarring for some people. And there's other settings on here too that I don't typically use, like definition, which is in other applications called texture. And then you have noise reduction. So if you have a lot of noise in your image, you can do noise reduction on the iPhone as well. And then vignetting, which is just simply darkening the edges. So these are all very basic editing capabilities that this application does have. And as you can see, we already have a pretty decent looking image just straight out of the phone. Like we took this photo with the native Photos application, and now we are editing with the native Photos application. So that's actually not bad at all. We'll go ahead and finish that off, and that's it. That's our image. So I've gone ahead and duplicated that. So we're going to see that this is the before and that this is the after. So already you can see the difference between the two photos. You could probably dive a little bit deeper into this and do a little bit more enhancements, a little bit more touch up here and there, but the basic editing settings on the Photos application is powerful enough to at least give you an idea of what to edit and how to edit it. Next, we're going to move on to a free application called Snapseed. Now, Snapseed is an application developed by Google, if I'm not mistaken, and I've never used this application before, so we're going to use it for the first time together in this video. Again, this is my first time opening it. We'll go ahead and check it out. We're going to add in a photo. Now, I duplicated this photo, so we're going to re-upload the raw image And right here, it's going to give me a little bit of a tutorial of how to swipe and change the exposure levels here. So we're going to go through and do the same thing. We're going to just check out each of these different ones. So these already have some settings on there, the temperature and the tint, because the iPhone already implemented these for color correcting whenever the photo was taken. That's pretty common for cameras to do that, where you set the color temperature up front, and then the tint is just the magenta and greens, because sometimes you get a little bit of those colors. So basically we're going to go through and just set these up and then go forward. Okay, now once you've done that, it's going to now take you to a different screen where you have a lot more options to choose from for editing. We do have this adjust button down here where you can adjust different things like brightness, contrast, saturation, ambience, highlights, shadows, warmth. These are a little bit different than what we saw originally. Basically, it just took you through the lighting section, had you adjust the global lighting on it, and now it's taking you to a new page where you have a lot more options. We do have the ability to do selective editing, which is really powerful, especially when it comes to car photography. If you want to focus on a very specific part of the car, this is a great tool to use. So what this is doing is it's add a point to it, and it looks like it's a radial adjustment. So as I go up and down, you can see it's kind of going from the logo outward a little bit. So we'll go ahead and just leave that there. Let's see if we can add another point here. We want to add this blue intake, bring that up a little bit. It might be using AI to select that. It's not giving me any sort of indication of what it's selecting. Let's see if we can do saturation. So now I just want to saturate that one specific item. Okay, not bad. I wish it would show what you are selecting, but that is still something you can play around with. You do also have the ability to crop. Now you do have the ability to crop on the native Photos app as well. I just didn't show that, but on here we'll see what kind of options we have. For social media, I like to do for portraits 4x5, which it should be on here. Yes, 4x5 for portraits, or 5x4 for landscapes. So you have both of those. You also have the square option, because if you do the square option for Instagram, it's different than if you do 4x5 or 5x4 for that matter. And then you also have the ability to do 9x16. So if you want to do a Instagram story, or if you want to use it as a background for your phone, that's an option there as well. So it's pretty nice. You got a big difference in here than you do in the other application, where I think in the other application, you don't have as many options. We also have the ability to do some healing. So with healing, this is probably going to be more like touch on a spot right there, and it's going to generate. Yep, that's exactly what that is. With healing tools, you just have to be careful, because sometimes they'll just make the selection for you, but at least you have that option here if you want to do some healing. You also have a really cool tools section here. So there's some adjustments and corrections, retouching, transformations, and then there's also styles. So the nice thing is that these are basically going to be LUTs that are built in. So if I want to have a very specific look to my photo, I can go through here and select a profile and say, ooh, I like this one. It gives a little bit of a glow. It is a little bit dark, but you can also change that later if you want to. So that's pretty cool. You have some different options here. We also have some creative options here as well, where we've got double exposure, which let's see what that looks like. That's pretty cool. So double exposure is a trend that some people do. This is just an example of that. So basically what it's doing is it's taking a second photo and it's reducing the opacity of that photo to overlay with the original photo. So that's cool. That has that built in. You do also have lens blurring. So lens blurring is something that I try to avoid as much as I can when it comes to taking photos on my phone, because it's going to artificially blur everything that's outside of this circle. And although that is useful, it's similar to what I said in the first episode about the portrait mode. It sometimes does ruin the photo, but you do have that as an option here as well. So this is a pretty featured packed application, and this is free. You don't have to make an account or anything. I just downloaded it and opened it up and started editing this photo. So this is a really cool tool to consider. The last application I'm going to be highlighting is Lightroom Mobile. Now, Lightroom Mobile has a free version and a paid version. I personally own the paid version, so I'm just going to be focusing on the free version items in this section, so that way I'm not giving you the wrong information. But it is something to consider purchasing, because you do get a very powerful application to edit these photos. This is not sponsored by Adobe, by the way. I don't think they would ever sponsor my videos, so I'm just telling you from my own personal experience that this application on your phone is very powerful, and I would honestly think it's more powerful than the other two applications that we just talked about. So we have our photos here, and we'll go ahead and select the same exact photo we've been working with this entire time. Now in Lightroom, you're going to have a bunch of different tools down at the bottom. Yours might look slightly different than mine if you are using the free version versus me using the paid version. So that's just something to consider. I don't know if it looks different or anything like that. But again, we're just going to focus on the basics. So you have your lighting section here where you'll get exposure, contrast, highlights, all the important things, which I think this is a very nice, intuitive application to use. You also have the curve option. And what I really like about the curve option is I do this on the laptop. You can set your tone curves in a certain way where you get a really cool look right out of the gate. So I like to do a little S curve. There's like this line that goes diagonally in the middle of the screen from bottom left to top right. Those are those 2 points. And I like to do this little S curve surrounding that, and it gives you a very nice standard look. You also have the ability to do that with other colors. So you have your reds, greens, and blues where you can change if it goes more towards the teal or more towards the red. And then you have under your greens, you have more green or more magenta. And under blues, you obviously have blues and then your yellows. So those you can get creative with when you want to change the tones of the colors. And the way that you would imagine it is the bottom left-hand corner is going to be your blacks and shadows. The middle of the graph is your midtones, and the top right of the graph is your highlights and whites. So that's what you're modifying as you go through here. You do not have to use that, but that is just something I like to use. I'm going to skip forward to the color section here. Color section is going to be really intuitive. So you have your white balance. I always have mine as shot because I always shoot in the correct white balance when I'm shooting my photos. So we're going to leave that alone. However, if you did accidentally change your white balance and it's very blue, this is where you can make it more warm or vice versa. And you can see here that we already have some color temperature and tint correction. And again, that's because the camera did it for me. I had the white balance set specifically on the phone. And then you have your vibrance and your saturations. There's also this lens blur section, which I don't know if it's part of the free or paid section, but you do have the ability to produce a blurry look to your image so that way it looks like it came from a regular lens. Again, use this with very small amount of detail in it because you can overdo it and make the image look a little bad. You also have under the effects section, you have your texture, your clarity, and dehaze. Clarity just kind of enhances the look of the image overall. It does kind of get a bit much if you use too much of it. Dehaze is going to be useful when you're, say, taking a picture of a car that's drifting and there's a lot of smoke and haze in the sky. You can use the dehaze tool to reduce that. It just kind of removes it and darkens it a little bit. So just use that a little bit here and there. And then you also have grain, which if you want to get more of that film look, you can add grain to it. You also have the ability to do noise reduction, sharpening, and then there's even color noise, which personally, I don't ever use color noise, but if that's something that you're interested in, that's there. And then you also have lens correction. So whenever you take pictures with a traditional camera body and lens, there's a little bit of a distortion to the image depending on what lens you're using. Adobe has built-in profiles that will correct it and flatten out your image. So you don't have this barrel look to your image. It'll just completely flatten out for you. This is toggled on by default. iPhones don't really have that problem because there's no physical lens that would create that sort of distortion, but you can have that turned on if you want. We also have the ability to add in presets. So these are all my presets that I personally have developed, and they are available if you want to check them out. I'll leave in the description down below for you. But these presets, you can see a preview on the left-hand side of what it will look like when you apply it to the image itself. So we're gonna go ahead and pick Mean Bean Machine. This is gonna give a very baseline edit to get you started. So this looks pretty dark and contrasty. So I would go from here and I would make my edits through that, but you can do that pretty easily through stuff like your tone curve. You can do it through your sliders and all that kind of stuff. Presets are a really good way to get you started. They are never going to be a one-click solution though. So keep that in mind if you use presets or if you have purchased presets from other people, that you're not going to be able to just select a preset and be done with it. You're going to have to make adjustments. Now, a section that you don't have access to on the free version is the masking section. So this is your selective editing. This is a feature that I think is worth paying for because of the fact that you can really enhance the photo by targeting specific spots of the photo to make it look better. But again, that's on the paid version, so that is something to take into consideration when you're using this application. You'll only be able to use basic stuff like the presets, the exposure sliders, and stuff like that. So once we're done with the image, we can go and export it. In the top right hand corner, there's a share button. And then with this one, we can share it directly to Instagram, which is pretty neat on this application, or you can export it to your phone. When it comes to exporting to your phone on whatever application is that you're using, which in this case would just be Snapseed and Lightroom Mobile, because on your native Photos app, you don't have to export it. It's already there. You want to use the dimensions where you're going to compress the image for social media. So I select small on the Lightroom app because it's just the default one. You can customize it if you want, where you can pick your long side. Now there's debate on what is the best settings for exporting from Lightroom for Instagram usage, but I just use the standard small because when you compress the image yourself, social media is going to compress it less. And that is the whole point here. If social media compresses your image a lot, it's going to reduce the quality of the photo. So we want to do that compression ourselves up front however we can. So that way there's less compression when you upload it to social media. Now, I know I did go through the settings pretty quickly on each of these applications, but I want to try and keep this video short and to the point and at least show you what each application is capable of. All three of these applications I mentioned are free, with the exception of Lightroom Mobile has a paid version. So that is something that you can look into in the future, but I would recommend checking out Snapseed and the free version of Lightroom Mobile, because those two applications are going to give you a lot more control than the native Photos app does. But if you don't want to download any applications and you just want to try out the Photos app for yourself on your iPhone, that's completely fine too. When you're going to edit these photos on your phone, the benefit that you have is that majority of the people that see your photos are going to be looking at them using their phones as well. So if you're using an iPhone and you're editing on your iPhone and other people are viewing your photos with your iPhone, you're going to have the best accuracy when it comes to color because you're using the same device that other people are looking at the photo with. But you don't want to overdo it when it comes to the editing, because it does become unrealistic and it does kind of deter people from wanting to look at your photos. So make sure that when you're adjusting your exposures and your colors and stuff like that, you're trying to keep as close to realistic as possible. There is obviously room to grow and make it look more gloomy or a very specific look that you want to go with on your photos, but we don't want to overcomplicate that up front. We just want to focus on the basics. So get it to as true to life as you can when it comes to your edits, and just kind of go from there and build on your skill and build on your style, because eventually you're gonna find your own style that you love to edit in and that other people can appreciate. So far in this series, we've talked about all the things that are baked into your phone that you can use for free to take photos and edit them. In the next episode, we're gonna be talking about the accessories that you can purchase to enhance your photos even further. So if you found value in this video, please leave a like down below. If you want to see more and you want to keep on track with the series, hit that subscribe button so you'll be the first to know about it. And I will see you all next time.